What's up, y'all? It is 5 p.m. West Coast time. You're watching the trades. Tell a friend. We're going to have a really great show. We're just going to get warm up. We're going to start the show in 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Let us know if you have any questions for our guests today. Just checking everything. Okay, cool. Perfect. We're live on Instagram as well. If you want to join the convo, come to the YouTube. I have a link in the bio. If you want to join the conversation, as we're getting this show started, let us know where you're calling from. And if you have any questions for our guests, let me do the due diligence right now, setting up the show. Really great show today. Set that off. Let us know where you are watching from. We're coming to you live from Instagram as well. If anyone has any questions, why not? You're coming from two channels. Okay, we'll figure that out. We're gonna start in 1 minute or 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Really great show. We're gonna ask the deep questions, the hard hitting questions. Three. Show all of that. Salim, what up? Perfect guy. Shoot. Nueva, New York. We got to talk about your era, bro. Maybe you could help answer some questions. All right, let's start this countdown. We're going to go deep today. No pause. This video has been brought to you by Break Connect. Go to the website and register. Check out what they have to offer at Break. Yo, what's up? This is Shadow Rock and Profowon of the Floor Gangs and Knuckle Neck Tribe, and you're watching The Trades, the show about breaking, hip hop, and the business of. How's everyone doing this fine Tuesday, early evening for the West Coast? About 8 o'clock for the East Coast heads out there. Thanks for tuning in. We have a really great show coming to you live from Instagram and on YouTube. So if you want to join the convo, I want people to engage in this one because I feel like this is very, very important. Before we get to that, I just want to thank for everyone that tuned in last week. We had a show with uh Dino Rock, Heat Rock, and Zeshin, and we talked about breaking and mental health. And the whole thing is Zeshin is a psychiatrist, so he is an MD. He can actually he doesn't just do the talk therapy. He could prescribe medication and do and basically help people that that need help as far as like mental health needs. And I think that was very important because all of us that on the panel last week touched upon mental health as far as like going to therapy. We all, we all opened up about being in therapy. We all opened up about how breaking is therapeutic, but does not replace therapy because, you know, first of all, hip hop's from trauma. So that's one big giant thing. Thus, the toxicness. That's the game we play. That's the toxic game that we play to let out our frustrations, as what Zesha would call sublimation. So that was a really good show. You could check that out here on the Profowon channel. And thanks for tuning in. It was really successful. Again, it's been really good as far as like opening up as far as that. We have a really good show, and I'm about to talk about how this show came about. But before we do that, we gotta clean some house really, really quick. So first of all, I'm almost at 2,300 subscribers. Not a lot in YouTube standards, but a lot in breaking standards because B-boys don't like to talk. They don't like to listen to our podcast so much. But almost 2,300 of you do. Here's the thing. I know that people are watching. I can see it in my analytics. But you haven't subscribed. And I get it. I don't want to flood my my subscription box and I'm just gonna see a bunch of stuff. No, 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 no. Hold on. It's free. I'm not asking you for any money yet. To subscribe is free and it will really help out because like even though I'm monetized, I have about 13 bucks waiting in there on my AdSense. That's how much money I made so far. But it's not about the money, obviously. It's about documentation of dope interviews, such as I had dope interviews with guys like B-Boy Salsa. I have interviews with Wild Child from the Loop Pack. I have interviews with Track 2, interviews with Moy, interviews with our guest today. Like so many interviews, and I'm at this is my 110th episode on YouTube, and I still have to, I'm in the process of transferring all of them to Spotify because I know not everyone can watch the video, but if you're listening to your car, Spotify is a better option, right? Because you can turn off your phone and still listen. So again, thank you so much. But what would really help out is that I had more subscribers and more viewers, so that way we could do cool stuff like go on trips where I can go on the spot and interview people, and I think that would be super valuable. So again, if you are not subscribed, please subscribe. Click the like button on this video, click subscribe button. I'm not going to say smash, I refuse. And click the bell for notifications if you do like content like this, because we make a lot of great content as far as information. I think I have the most well rounded episodes because it's not just breaking, it's like freaking like DJ Shortcut, Rob Swift. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it varies, and that's why I like because it's not like even though it's a predominantly breaking channel, it's hip hop still. That's in the title, the trades, right? All right. So please click the link and subscribe, right? Subscribe, click the button to subscribe. Okay. With that being said, all right. So um on Instagram, my man Prevail from Ready Rock and MZK came out with a reel that talked about foundation. And I was like, the day of, like, I don't like freestyling shows. Like, sometimes I'll go on live and just talk smack, but then, like, to freestyle a show and a guest, I don't like doing. But I saw him, like, yo, you want to do a show today? Right before I went to work, I was like, you want to do a show today? I want to ask. Because when he said foundation, it was so general and so, like, broad. And depending, and even though, like, a lot of, like, the elders in breaking say everyone breaks the same, I don't necessarily believe that. I still believe that there is such thing as regional styles and regional beliefs. And the whole thing is, so when he said foundation, everyone could say like, I have foundation, and then be like, not what according, because like house dancing might be your foundation. What a lot of what north uh north Northern California dancers use house as a foundation. And like that's why I wanted to ask him, is like, are you talking about house? And he's like, no, that's house dancing still. I want, foundation, breaking foundation. So I wanted to be super specific on that. Then Ajax threw an event the weekend prior, and he had B-Boy Smirk on, and he was of Ready Rock and formerly Rocksteady Crew, and he wanted to jump on. Was like, yo, I think he means this. So it was like we had a really dope conversation with Smirk, two Ready Rock guys, Smirk and Prevail, and they talked about foundation. So I was like, this is good because we talked about like what he was like as far as what Prevail was looking at as far as like what he meant by foundation. Because again, not everyone, there's so many things going on. We are in a gluttonous mode as far as information. So the reason why I have these shows and talk is to refine it, just to kind of get perspective, not to say what's right or wrong, but just refine to make sure that we're going in the direction that we want to go into, or you have direct, like as actual definition and vocabulary, which we're still trying to agree upon. That's the biggest problem here. And I think it's really dope to have these conversations. So this person hit me up. He said it was a really dope show. I said, thank you very much. I need you on here because we need to talk about some of the things that has come up, and we need to go into detail. And this person has been on the show before. He was on my other show, Gearheads, 2 years ago. But prior to that, he was on my show back in 2017, I believe. Yeah, 2017. So it was kind of like, yo, you need to come back so we can, I felt like in the Gearhead show, it was very basic, like, oh, this hip hop and how we make music, but nah, we're gonna go in deep. We're gonna get philosophical. We're gonna be archaeologists. We're gonna talk about things that no one really talks about because of our age, even just our age. We can get into detail about these things. So hailing originally from New Jersey City, or not New Jersey City, but New Jersey, we got my man, Bboy. Why not? How you doing? Okay, you're not coming out in that one. Maybe this one? No. Where are you at? Don't see you. There you go. Okay, there he is. All right, cool. What,
What's
Tony?
up, Provo?
How you doing, bro? Thanks for being on the
I'm good.
show.
How you doing?
Man, like so much to talk about, man. Like, we talk behind the scenes a lot, just when a topic comes up or whatever, whatnot. And we're amongst this really crazy period, the information age, we could say, where like prior to, and I'm going to say it because a lot of this is how Fat Joe got in trouble in the first place, because
Hmm.
he called out a group versus a person because he didn't want to give him air. I don't care.
Hmm.
Like Tariq, I would just say Tariq Nasheed followers, right? Like it's basically, let's be very specific. Tariq Nasheed followers. Fat Joe got in trouble because he didn't say Tariq Nasheed. He didn't want to give him air, but I'm more like, no, we have to like, let's like
Yeah,
this
name.
nip
These
this
are
in the
people.
bud, huh?
There's these are people. We can name
Yeah,
them. It's fine.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. It's like, so what if they get more publicity? If they, whatever, let them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I don't
there's
mind
this
saying it.
conversation around giving people clout, but I mean, you know, they already are who they are, so it's like they can't get any more clout anyway. It's fine. You know what I mean? We can mention their names. We can talk about them if that's the subject matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So
So it was Tariq Nasheed. Here's the crazy part, which is like kind of dope though. But I feel like Tariq Nasheed followers know more about the history of breaking than most B-boys and B-girls, which is crazy
now,
to me.
why though? Why do you think that is? I have
Well,
a
because they're trying
theory.
to prove a point. Trying to prove a point. They don't
Okay.
really care about the dance. They just want to prove a point. But yet, in trying to prove the point, they're educated more than B-boys and B-girls. Like, they'll know
Mm.
Batch ain't the first, but the fact that they know Batch from TVB is crazy. Like,
Yeah, they do digging, they do the research, they watch the interviews, you know. A lot of information is out there, man. Like, but it's like you said, like you don't know if people are really watching like 2 hour long interviews. But like the long form content is really what's needed, I think, for a lot of these conversations, because it's not so simple. And also, like, the short form content is getting a lot of people in trouble because they're snippets of an idea. It's not a
Yeah,
full fledged thought out idea. It's just
yeah,
like a 10-second thing just to throw online very quickly.
yeah.
So
Oh, I've
these
gotten in
things are
trouble
way
for
more
that.
detailed.
I've gotten
Hmm.
so much trouble. It's like, why did you say that? I go, have you watched the whole thing? Like,
Yeah.
no. Like, all right then.
Right.
Like, there is context to it, right? And that's
Yeah.
like you said, everyone is getting in trouble for that. And even like at the started, like what was the conversations that started this conversation is hip hop dance. Even the term hip hop dance, right?
Mm.
It's a loaded to me. It's a loaded term because you have this true. I call it the true school purists, right? And then in the true school purists that came around 1993, 94, 95, they kind of shunned like hip hop choreo is not real hip hop. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like yet these are our mentors, such as Buddha Stretch. We have Talim McHugh, who's an SOS dancer. We have danced for Lord Jamar, which was mad funny. He danced with Brandy Weird, by the way, but he was there. He was there when like a lot of it when the transfer from it was breaking. While they were still breaking in the 80s, they were still doing these social dances that morphed into hip
Yeah.
hop freestyle dance, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I got in trouble because I want to pose the question of like, how are we hip for her first hip hop dance when a lot of the moves that we created wasn't from like hip hop songs. Not saying, and I was like, no, breaks are hip hop, but within that, I want people to think because we're the first, that's the first rhetoric of a true school dogmatic person. Is like breaking is the official dance of hip hop. Like yet, and then I want to pose that question because no one thinks about it. They just this is the
Yeah.
rhetoric, this is the dogma I learned. I'm indoctrinated in it, and I'm going to preach it without any context of why or what.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, to label or to think of timelines is also already difficult and maybe in
Mm.
some ways problematic, uh it's very hard to like kind of pinpoint something immediately and be this is it. There's a
Right.
lot more to it. There's a lot more kind of, if you can say, fading into the next thing. It's not just immediate and abrupt like that. So when you say this
Yeah.
day 1970 something, that's not, it's not giving the full context and the multiple stories that kind of helped something evolve or create itself. So I think it's difficult, man. Once we start getting into these timelines and stuff, we have to leave some space for possibilities. It's not just all about like, boom, this is it, period.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And someone said this. There was because like Dr. Derek, who's my friend, who's like public enemy number one to Tariq Nasheed. Um, he he was on a Dr. Derek was on a show with Dr. Mayat and Unk, and they're like two Baltimore scientists that want to talk about. They do first of all, they had Professor Dave on there talking about like Lord Jamar and just really like how he like flipped Jamar and spanked him. And Dr. Mayat was actually on Lord Jamar's show before, but they were talking about like these things. And I felt like it was a good conversation because they're scientists. They went through the scientific process, even though they didn't agree with Dr. Derek so much. It was a civil conversation. And they're not for like what oh shoot. Coming in and out. Tony, coming in and out. Coming in and out. I don't know what's going on. Let's try this one. No? Okay. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, as Tony's getting back getting back getting back into focus. I don't know what's going on.
Can
So
you hear me,
Dr.
Pro?
Derek, yeah, I can hear you. Something is going
Okay,
on.
it's cool. Just keep talking then. I guess the video is just tripping.
Okay. All right. So anyway, Dr. Derek was on. It was a civil conversation. My point being that when Lord Jamar came out with that, like, breaking is not, he said breakdance is not an element of hip hop. And what I think he was trying to, say is like dance is part of hip hop, not just breaking. You were on with, and I'm gonna bring up the clip as here. camera is focusing on, I'm going to bring up the clip with Monsell Durden. You and Monsell got online and y'all started talking about this. And this is the first time I've heard of Monsell Durden as well. Even though I've seen it, actually I've seen some of his stuff in some of his documentaries. But that's the first time I saw him, and he brought up some good points. Um, how did that come about? Why
Well,
not?
we
Yeah.
were seeing like a bunch of stuff online. People were sharing a lot of things with us.
Mhm.
Um, and they do that a lot because we're both kind of scholars in the field of the
Right.
dance, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what
But
happened was
yeah. Go
like
ahead.
we were just getting sent a bunch of stuff, and then like me and Mansell have done a couple lives like a few times prior to that, and we were like, let's go live on this particular topic because we're getting a lot of questions.
Right.
Um, and we actually got a really good turnout for those two lives. We did two lives actually, and there was a good turnout because I think it's just a hot topic at this moment. Um, Specifically, Lord Jamar has been really stirring up a lot of energy around this concept, you know.
Yeah.
And in an interesting way, like when I was talking to Mansell about it, we also found ourselves agreeing and disagreeing with Lord Jamar, you know.
Mhm.
And I think the disagreement is a little bit of his sort of ignorance to like what's happening with breaking right now,
Right.
or what he thinks breaking has done from the past up until now. I think it's completely. Uh, I think he's missed the mark a bit on that, you
Right.
know, and that's because maybe he's just not really looking out for it anymore like that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's different. I'm just gonna switch to my computer camera because I think that works better. But anyway,
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I was.
um,
It's good. I got you in the background. Boom. Now it.
yeah,
Is
sorry. It's
that
just like I was trying to get a
maneuvering?
better
Maneuvering. Yeah.
camera,
Yeah.
whatever. But we'll just use my computer. It's fine.
All right.
So um, the thing about his statements is that he says nobody does it anymore. I think when people are having these conversations and getting into these debates or arguments, is that they make wild statements out of emotion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes it's that, and then sometimes it's just out of like I just want to prove all of my points to be correct. I don't want to see any side of where you're coming from at this point because you're striking a chord.
Right.
You're
Right.
you're saying something that's hurtful to me, so I'm not going to agree with anything you're talking about. You know, um, where we think Lord Jamar is more on point is what he's talking about is that
Tony, you still there? I don't know if that's dramatic thoughts or not.
in the greater scope of me.
No, you got cut off again.
Okay,
All right, now
I
you're back.
think I
Here,
think
go for it.
I'm back. Okay, so
Yeah.
I think where we see what Jamar is talking about is that he's speaking more about the larger scope of Black culture, and in that case and in that respect, breaking is one of the dances, and he's not wrong with that.
Yes.
The other thing that we may not agree with is that he tries to compare then breaking to a social dance.
Hmm.
Now, breaking may have came out of social dance, and we'll get to
Yeah.
this, I'm sure, pretty soon.
Yeah.
But through the history of what happened with breaking and how it also then revised itself and revived itself, it has now become something completely different. You can't compare the WAP to breaking. You can't. The WAP is a specific way to do a dance that's a social dance. Breaking
Hmm.
has become something else, and that may have been through other pathways, other cultures, other people getting involved.
Yeah.
You know, that's just what happened. So this is also the story of relations of people within the United States. And then specifically when we talk about Bronx, and then what happens outside of the Bronx. So it's like we can accept the fact that something's changed, or we don't. And I think that's kind of the question that now comes up. Are we accepting the fact that, breaking may have started off one way and now it's something completely different, you
And
know?
this is why I watch you on the show, because we've never, no one has really talked about it, because again, a lot of the people that are even popular in breaking were born in 1998. You know what I mean?
Yeah, too late.
1996. So
Yeah.
they don't know a world without it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like all they know
Right.
is like, even though if it's like popular or not, they don't know a
Mm,
world without it.
right.
Even if you're born 82 and you were like 10, breaking died, and it was still maybe very, even though people did it, and we're going to get into that later. There's these missing things that you're not noticing because of just where you are, your focus here, versus like the whole range background, like dancing. There's a period of dancing that, and we could talk more in detail. This is like when, like, it wasn't cool to dance. Maybe around the gangster rap era, like when the Chronic came out. There was no like
Mhm.
social dance. I'm sure in Atlanta there's like maybe regional. There's regional dances, but by that time, that whole like, let me have a good running man to get next to you, and maybe they'll play Jodeci in the end of the night, didn't happen. It was just like, it's grind time. It was like
Mhm.
after Luke, after Luke is like, it's grind time. You could just grab a girl by that point. There
Mhm.
was no this like, maybe I'll get closer. It was just like,
Mhm.
let me grab her and then like just freak her, and grind or whatever. And then, what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So that is hip hop too, right? Like we're saying that is part of hip hop too, right? Like,
100. But there's a lot. That's what I'm saying. There's like to kind of put a line in the sand to say it started in this point. That's where I think the missing of people's histories is not happening right now, and they're not agreeing with each other, and there's a lot of divide because where do you put that post in terms of where things really began and started?
mhm.
And I think a lot of you know what is being called foundational Black Americans are saying at this point is that we don't want this thing to become what happened to
Mm,
jazz.
mm,
And that's a really important thing to parallel hip hop to, because it's extremely similar. And it's
right,
also, you kind of almost cannot speak about hip hop without speaking about jazz or funk or soul or anything of the prerequisite,
right.
you know? So those types of things are important to Black people in America, especially. And it makes sense that they would fight for something like that. You know what I mean? So, you know, I think the question is too is like where's people's empathy in terms of these conversations, and how do you also get past though the characters who are making the statements? And I call them characters because that's exactly how they are. Their
Mhm.
voice changes, they make faces. It's almost like talking to children, you know.
Mm, right,
And that's why we're having a hard time getting through a lot of these conversations, because people are not, I don't want to say acting their age or whatever. I don't know what to call it, to be honest. I just have a hard time sitting through listening to people's conversations, because it turns into I'm going to make fun of you
right, yeah,
conversation.
yeah,
A lot of times too, because we're not, I can't like sit here and talk to you about this thing because you're not really seeing what I'm talking about, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So
And,
it's,
and
it's,
this,
yeah,
yeah,
it's difficult.
and this is where it's like why I felt like Moncel's so in this, I don't want to even say debate. My whole thing is this: you better have Moncel on your side. You better have a DVD on your side. You better have these guys
Yeah.
that have been studying this and
Yeah.
documenting this.
Yeah.
Like David D on his show, the Hard Rock Radio, he interviewed Charlie Rock long time ago. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like it's documentation. Like he talked to Paradise Gray, talking about it, and yet no one's pulling out any of this stuff. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, well, this guy's, Tariq made a documentary. It's like, well, why don't you just trace it versus like just I saw that Tariq, or whoever did this, like, and that's my whole thing. Let's have the experts talk about it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, let's have the experts talk who actually put the time and effort. You know what I mean? And you could agree, disagree, but instead of just like, that's facts. I'm like, how did you care about these people? Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
To like, you know what I'm saying? Like, for me, it's like, to like, oh, Sasa. And then I got to talk. That meant a lot to me because I was like researching the last 6 years and that to introduce him at freestyle session meant a lot to me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or like Coca Rock or whatever. It wasn't because of a debate. It was because I want to learn what was their experience, A, B, and C. It goes deeper, whatever, whatnot.
Mhm.
And and my gripe with the breaking community is just like specifically the breaking community.
Mhm.
It's just like what was laid in 1994 is dogmatic truth. Don't question it.
Mhm.
And that's my with the specifically the breaking community because they don't know the history of their own. First of all, their own region most of the time. They do for the most part, but that's starting to go away. And
Yeah.
then the other dances from the region and the other like because of like forever's hip hop. Like, no, you can't tell me nothing. Like, hold on. Like, you don't even know why you're saying what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't
And
even know what you. Yeah, go ahead.
there's always more to it. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing too. We can hear something that may sound very factual, may feel like it's on the right path, but it's also one person telling one story. There's multiple stories. How many times have you been somewhere where you witnessed something and someone had a completely different idea of how it went down?
Right.
That already happens in today's time where we have documentation of mostly everything. And even we can watch the same thing and still have a different opinion on what happened.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
there's a lot more to this. And then we get into the lines of like, and this is what happened with jazz. Who's telling those stories?
Mm,
What's the accessibility of this information? Who's hoarding this information? Who's not knowing of the information but is in charge of telling you what's what? You know, how far are we going to go in terms of making something solid? For example, giving something a specific time date, giving something a name, right? Things like that. Now we're getting into conversations of codification and things like that.
mhm.
I do think hip hop is more of a newer generation where they don't think about those things as much. But when you start to pull in older generations with their conversations about things, that may be something that they talked about within their community, but they didn't share with everybody else. So when certain movements or other things leave that community and go somewhere else, and then they name it, there's ownership in that.
Right.
They get credit also for naming something that
Right.
may not be what people called that thing at that time, you know. So things get really, as you keep going, more and more what people would consider watered down or just further away from the origin. You
Right.
know, these things are going to happen.
Yeah.
They're going to happen.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That's gonna happen.
so
Yeah.
so it's like at some point the people who are further off from the origin have to maybe eventually start at least caring or pointing, you know, the arrow back to where people might want to find that information out or at least seek it out to some extent. Or they don't care and they're just going to move forward, you know. But that then is your moral is going to be put on trial, and that's a lot of what's happening, especially within what is considered to be white or corporate America, with everything that involves anything that's not of you know usual white American culture. Like there's a lot of things that they've like kind of taken and moved with without giving any kind of credit to anything that came
Yeah.
before, and those things are getting called out every day. I mean, you see it all the time on the internet and things like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know
Just
if I'm rambling a bit,
no, no,
or
no,
I
no.
just
It's
want
good.
to
It's
try and
good.
stay
No,
on topic, you know?
I like it. I like it. No, that's the whole point of a show. It's like we could go on tangents. It's all good. We got the time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think one of the things is like one of the arguments is like the trade Nasheed arguments is like, well, we did it and then we dropped it, and I started thinking about it before we went on the show, and I was like, how many people still do the Running Man? So you say you just dropped the Running Man? No, it's the same thing. It's like it's within the same thing. Like
Yeah.
people that like to do the Running Man is because they either teach dance, they love it, and they hold on to it because it reminds them of a certain era, and maybe they create from that foundation of the Running Man move. But
Mhm.
there's no way the Turfers did the Running Man and the Crumpers did the Running Man, and even though maybe they saw it, they went with what the music was telling them at that time, and it wasn't that foundation. So it's just
Yeah.
like that argument of just like we dropped it. No, it's just like anything else. It's just whatever's. Oh, this is kind of cool. It's just and it happens in breaking. Okay,
Yeah.
I really like hollowbacks. 1999 hollowbacks. Then it was like, oh, everyone, let's try to do this air flare. Then it became air flares. It's like it's the same thing. Tap mills, like it's the same thing. Things go in trends, no matter what. Sounds of music, whatever, and that's how creation gets. But no one drops anything. It's just like Buster Rhymes does not sound the same as his leaders in new school. He just doesn't. He doesn't dress the
Right.
same. The sound's
Yeah.
different. He's
He's
evolved.
taken his own evolvement to something else. Yeah. You
That
know.
and so that's the argument towards that. That's just
Now,
I'm saying like
if he turned
that.
around and said whatever I was doing with leaders of the new school was whack, if he had said something like that, or if he disregarded all the things that he maybe did prior,
Oh right,
people
yeah,
would
yeah,
have probably an issue with that. You see what I'm saying?
100, one
You
hundred.
know,
Because now you're
because
messing with people's
people
nostalgia.
live by that whole like the way Buster was then. You know, some
Yeah,
people just they like him now just because that's who he was. You know,
right,
back then.
right,
You know what I mean?
right, right. And I mean that's all of us have evolved as far as just movement. Like
Yeah.
when we were on tour, I don't like there's the concepts that I still buy changed my breaking too. Like same as
Yeah.
you. Like we all kind of evolve in our own ways, and we can't just stick to just like even though that might maybe people love that, just like I love Illmatic is the best. I don't know why he's doing stuff with Hit Boy, Nas doing stuff with Hit Boy, blah blah blah. That's just garbage. But he has to evolve because then he'd be
Hmm.
stagnant and be just like whatever. So evolution, and this is like the whole point of just like the evolution of just movement and dance. And this is where it's like what I do like about Moncel is when he pulled out those articles of this is the first article where they said hip hop as a culture. He had
Yeah.
that. He had
Yeah.
that book in comedy in 1921, and it was just like, here's you do a head spin. But he was like, this ain't breaking though. I like the
Right.
fact that because most people are like, because it's true. If I do a head spin in a house circle,
Mhm.
they would think he just did a head spin, but he's dancing the house. He's in our
Yeah.
scene,
Yeah. I mean, if
so
you
it
just
becomes
go in the
house.
cipher and do a head spin, people would be also probably the same way. They'll be like, okay, cool, that's great. But did you rock? Did you do footwork? Did you do, you know what I'm saying? So like going back to the foundation conversation, like
Yeah, there you go.
there's levels to the foundation. Everyone has their own personal foundation. So your foundation is where you grew up, maybe what your ethnicity is, maybe what dances you did, at that time prior to learning about breaking.
Mhm.
Once you learn breaking, then you understand there is a foundation to breaking, right? And then you learn how to kind of fuse the two
Right.
in order to be original at least. But some people may have a dance background and a dance foundation, and then when they get to breaking, they have to learn the breaking foundation at that point. I can't just go in a cipher and do a head spin.
Right.
I mean, I could do anything in the cipher,
Yeah.
that's fine. But the thing is, it's like, am I breaking just because I did a head spin? No.
Mm. Right.
Right. So we can take pieces. It's like everyone keeps going back to that footage from, I think it was Nigeria or something from back
Yeah. Yeah.
then. And
Yeah.
they keep showing that film. And that's, yes, that in a lot of ways is a older version possibly of what could be looked at as breaking. But are they breaking? Not necessarily, because breaking now has created this very particular way of doing it. And it took time to build that thing, you know and it changed. It has.
Yeah.
And it's done to a very specific kind of music. you
Right.
know so can I break to classical? Sure. But am I really showing the essence of breaking by breaking to classical? Not necessarily. Can I do it? Yes. But that doesn't mean that I'm now demonstrating breaking. you know
Right.
when you put all the right ingredients together, it makes sense. When you start to extract things, that's all they are. They're abstractions or extractions of something, of where we recognize this thing and where this thing really got its name. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it makes
my
me
for
think like, you could take a Chinese violin and then have
Mhm.
caparistas tick out the congos and the bongos and the berimbau, and then you have a Chinese violin. Like there's
Right.
there's dude like capoeira. the separation between capoeira and kung fu are like the Jenga. That's about it. You could do everything is about interchangeable. Maybe the rhythm is different, but as far as moves, do both styles of martial art have butterfly twists? Yeah. Do both flip? Yeah.
Sure,
Both have roundhouse
sure.
kicks, whatever order. But that beat and bow changes the fucking dynamic. The Jenga and the beat and bow changes the dynamic of that human movement. That's very, very, very similar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain, like, if we're speaking about these dances as folk, as cultural practices, it starts to develop its own theories and philosophies over time. Breaking has a very specific way now, and it
Right.
took time. This is where we say Jamar kind of misses the moment, because he's disregarding what it's become.
Right.
We understand what you're talking about, though. We get that, you're saying that when breaking was happening in its original state, it was just another one of those dances. And a lot of ways, it's like it pulled from Lindy and tap and all these things. It
Yeah.
makes sense.
Right.
And it was being done to funk music. There was no hip hop yet. This is also the
Right.
reason why I consider breaking in its original form a funk dance,
Ooh. Uh-oh.
right?
Uh-oh. I got in trouble for this, bro. I really got in trouble
that's
for this.
that's
Because
fine. I
I posed
mean,
the same question and people
yeah.
lost their minds.
Yeah. Well, this is the gradient when you start to go from one thing to another. Hip hop did not have its name yet. There was no genre considered hip hop yet. People were already breaking, right?
Mhm.
So that whole also four element picture wasn't even created
Yeah.
yet.
Right.
So prior to that, what were they dancing to?
Yeah.
And it's okay to look at things also in eras. You were speaking earlier on Instagram about the electronic, because the 80s brought ushered in a whole different way of moving,
Yeah.
because we were now in the electronic music era. It was like, hip hop is also that. You start bringing in technology and stuff like that, starts to change a lot,
Yeah.
you know. So it's known as the first hip hop dance. Yes, but it also, prior to it getting named that, was a funk dance for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then that makes me think I need to ask some of the guys, that are older, right? Like your Boogaloo Sams. And I'm sure they've
Mm,
answered it in some form or another. But it's just like, or the Blackbird Sturgeons, the guys out here in the Bay Area, right? The original Strutters and
mm.
stuff. If I say, "Hey, did you guys dance to Apache?" They probably look at me crazy. Like
No,
they're like,
those records
"Oh,
weren't played on the West.
yeah." It's just like, but like, I remember there was this KQED thing about hip hop, and I was kind of like, because it was a West Coast version, and Davey D was there, Tracy Barlow was there, Pop Tart was
Mm,
there. But Pop Tart said
mm,
something very profound.
mm.
He was like, "Man, I used to be." He had some name, something eloquence. I had my suit. And I was dancing Earth, Wind, and Fire. Then all of a sudden, hip hop. I had to change my name to Pop Tart. I had to wear buckles. I was like,
That's
whoa,
funny.
whoa. He even said it. So
Yeah.
he even acknowledged what I was doing before hip hop, even though it's strutting. I was
Yeah.
dancing to certain specific type of music and dressed a certain specific type of way. And it was
Mm,
almost like that East Coast messed up my whole flow because I was killing it and then had to change up because everyone liked hip hop.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's like my OG. You know what I'm saying? For him to say that, I was like, ah, finally,
Yeah.
someone that's elder that just like he told his
Generational.
perspective. Yeah.
Yep.
Where he was in
100%.
that transference while everyone else died, like didn't die, but they just stopped while he continued. He even learned like he was around in '88. He learned the Running Man. There's footage of him doing the Running Man and the WAP and all
Right.
this type of stuff. You know what I mean? And mixing it
Right.
with strutting. You know what I'm saying? So it was like
Yeah.
pretty dope that he was able to like just be able to like express that. Like, yo, there was a
Yeah.
difference. It wasn't
That's
just
real.
like it's from the South, and because if that was the
Right.
case, if you watch stats, why aren't they doing? They're doing ground moves, but they're not like they're dancing to like Sam and Dave and Rufus Thomas, but
Yeah.
they're not like breaking. They're locking.
Right.
Like if you see their foundation, a lot of them are doing the funky chicken. You know what I mean? They
That
might
was
have done
their
a
perspective
W.
of that music. That
Yeah,
was their perspective of that music. Their
Yeah,
reaction to that music was that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It
Yeah.
wasn't breaking, but they were like, "See, look!" It's like that's well, you know what I mean. Like there's a
Oh,
specific sound that these guys, all these guys, Dancing Doug, that he was like Somakosa, like you know what I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
Sasa, Voodoo Non, which was all like kind of has that Afro Latin like feel to it. Their songs were like
Yeah.
had Afro Latin feel to it. Like it was, I
Yeah.
was like, oh okay, dope, because like that was the stuff, that was the hard hitting boom bap. It was like versus like the hustle disco stuff that everyone else was doing right at the time, right?
Yeah.
So that's like, but no one puts that into consideration. You know what I mean? No one, and that's
It
is this. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
it's hard. It's hard, I think, too, for younger generations to try to understand stuff like that because regional, uh, so anything geographic wise, and time wise meant a lot before the internet.
Right.
It meant a whole lot before the internet because only if you have the privilege to really travel, you didn't see anything outside of your area.
100.
So when we started to, see other dancers from different places or see other artists from different areas, it was like, yo, like this is what y'all doing over here. It's very different. So you may be doing something similar. You may have been hearing even the same song,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
their reaction to that song, they did a different type of
Right.
movement to what was happening in the Bronx. And this is why you hear a lot of, especially older, OGs say this is a Bronx culture. Hip hop is a
Right.
Bronx culture. They'll say
Yeah.
that because yes, it was very specific to that area in terms of how they interpreted what that music was doing. You know what I mean?
And even what the, yeah, their taste in music, right? Because it's like their whole
Mhm.
thing is like they're
Certain
not playing
songs.
their, they, it was almost like we don't want to be the mainstream, you
Yeah.
know, we want this like gritty stuff that like, this soundtrack music. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
wanted, they wanted like, like stuff like that. And it's like, and it's, yeah, you can hear it in the tapes. The songs that they're
Yes.
picking in these tapes that are dated, right? Like even if it's like the earliest might be 1980 or 79, you could hear it. You could hear it. This is different from if we go to the West Coast and like what they liked. It was like
Mhm.
there's maybe some similar, and even just on like let's say national dances, they had their own flips on each dance that everyone did. That there'd be the
For
twist, or
sure.
that'd be the bus stop, or that be
Could
the
be
click
it's
clack,
different.
whatever.
Mhm.
It's still regional. There's still like like it's just like, and this is even in hip hop, like and
Yeah,
you can see like even in hip
for
hop,
sure.
even in selection of like what they like is rap is gonna be obviously right, like
Mhm.
and I think
Mhm.
no one puts that into consideration. That's why I feel like being older, I could see where there were these preferences, and like even as far as like like the East Coast West Coast war that happened with Biggie and Tupac. Like I was like 25, or I know I was 24 at that time. So it was like I saw it. Like the way I dressed, I was judged being a West Coast dude that liked wearing polo and you know what I'm saying? Like, and all that. And then like, while everyone's wearing like skinny jeans and Cortez, they all look at me like, oh, you on that, East Coast Lookster? Like that's what they would say. You East Coast Lookster? Like, no, I just like hip hop, man. Like I'm being
Mhm.
judged. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Right.
it's like, but then no one thinks about that. They just think, okay, Biggie and Tupac, and they're the greatest, and that's it. Not no, there was motherfuckers that judged you for the way, like,
Yeah.
even the way I
Yeah.
talk. Like, hella is a word that everyone used. I remember I went to New York, 1997. I said hella, and they're like, hella? What are you, a country bumpkin? Like, it's
Yeah,
like,
it's not a word that we use on the East Coast at all. We say mad.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
That's
I said
mad
hella, they're just
crazy.
like, yeah. And then again, this
Mhm.
is 1997, 97. Yeah, it
Mhm.
changed. Now people say it. It's just become part of the vernacular.
Mhm.
But I just remember that. I was just like, damn, I feel like a motherfucking outsider now, just because like the normal way I talked. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So it's
Language
crazy.
plays again another very strong role in all this stuff, man. You know?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go too deep in that direction, but I just want to point that out. It's important.
Yeah.
And it's
So
all it's all regional, man. It's
yeah.
all regional for sure.
So let's so I'm glad you talked about all the stuff that you said, because this was, like I said, I'm kind of freestyling right now. Like even though I had an agenda, I'm like, where do we go? Where do we start? Um, so now like we're getting to, we kind of, what we touched upon was this whole unawareness And there's this dogmatic thing about the four elements of hip hop. There is something dogmatic about that, right? That gives
Mhm.
us a religion, an identity of something. We're the real. We go in ciphers, and we do. You know, what I mean, we listen to Most Def. Don't listen to freaking, whatever mainstream. Da 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 da. Da, right? And
Yeah.
it spreads because there's a version of it amongst the 23-year-olds where it's like it's only Kendrick. It's only, you know what I mean? It's only this. I only go dressed
Yeah.
like this. Oh, that made, like Drake, trick that, right? It's this ongoing thing. And I'm not saying it's bad or not, because I was that dude, right? Like I was that dude in like 1994, like just chew sticks and like real MC ciphers and all that backpacker type stuff, right? I was
Hmm.
that dude, right?
Hip
Actually,
hop
people found
police.
videos of me. I was like, uh-oh.
Hmm.
They found videos of me rapping. I was like, uh-oh, y'all found it. Like, damn it, don't release it. Like when I was like all in that. That's why I call it the dogmatic true school people, right? And it spread
Okay.
to the like there's this, we could say even the cipher b-boys are very into this dogmatic four element hip hop. Everything else is whack, right?
Right.
But yet, there was this evolution of the dance, which was like it went from like popping and breaking. And I know that everyone wants to run away from the 80s when it comes to breaking. Like, nah, we don't do that 80s stuff. But some
80s
people
was dope,
embrace it.
bro. I like the
I'm
80s
like,
too.
I'm like, even though I grew up in it, I'm like, that's just my preference.
Uh-huh.
And talking to Buddha Stretch and like asking him, like, oh, when did you start dancing? We're doing Electric Boogie, but we were like, 1979. I was dancing the D Train, and I said, when Planet Rock came out, did it change everything as far as the way you used to pop? He's like 100%. I go everywhere around you, so it's documented. And so I think that's like the whole thing, like everyone's left, and why I feel like electro is like because that's the last thought of what the impression of breaking is. I think a lot of people, when the Olympics happened, a lot of people that didn't follow breaking expected that. They expected it's going to be like electro. It's going to be maybe guys doing a bunch of windmills and whatever, whatnot. And not like you said, it evolved. But I do you think there's something to what I'm saying is like you think it changed because if it changed in popping, you think it changed in breaking. Like it changed where it's like it was less of a dance and more that music is fast. So it's like I want faster windmills and like 80s
Yeah,
is like of excess and it's like do more and faster and like what I
for
mean.
sure.
Like, do you think
Yeah.
that played a part to like where the funk and like the Charlie Rock was like disappeared almost? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
I mean,
moves like the Charlie Rock. Yeah.
yeah, your intention and your values change over time depending on what's happening with the dance, right? Breaking is one of those dances, and I mean, I can't just single out breaking as one of them
Yeah.
now. If we look at most of the styles or the forms of dance that we kind of try to put under that hip hop umbrella, which I don't think is a good idea to do that. But there are certain like things. Again, these are things that lead up to what we might think of as hip hop dance now, which means then you can't disregard something like popping or locking or breaking, right? If
Mhm.
anything, those dances are very foundational to what hip hop is now,
Yeah.
right? So with that being said, movement gets very intricate. It gets very deep and involved. The technique of things get way more harder, I would say, clearer in terms of how to do certain things. And that's the evolution that people look at. That doesn't mean that the dance itself evolved, certain movements and things evolved, but I think that's also part of the disconnect of when people would look at breaking as in its original form compared to the 80s, compared to now, is that we started to move away from the dance, which would be the social dance aspect that we were talking about earlier.
Okay. Okay.
Because if you look at the earlier dancers, they always talked about specific dances that were happening at that time. They were pulling from those dances. Those are social dances. Social dances are dances that you do socially with others. When we break, when we do things like popping, etc., they have become specialties. They have become one person dancing by themselves or at someone else. That's different. It's completely different. It really starts to change everything once you take it out of the social dance element. So you start to lose things. This is why we have to constantly remind people to move their bodies, meaning the groove. Where's the groove at in your body? You're just moving your limbs. You're just moving your feet in this way. You're doing a footwork pattern, which is great, but the rest of your body's not connecting to the song, right? So it's these types of things that start to be investigated and looked at and saying, okay, this dance has evolved movement wise, but I wouldn't
Mm.
say the feeling, the essence, the origin, it's kind of got left behind, if that makes
Right,
sense. You know,
right,
so we have to now, if we care about that, find ourselves having to go back,
right.
you know, and we ask people, like, you can even go like, I'm used to talk to Wiggles about this because at times I was with, we would, you know, do tours together, right?
Yeah.
Which we got another one coming up 2025 in the summer.
Oh, oh, oh.
So Top Rock City. Hey, just want to throw that in there real quick.
There you go.
Um, you know, we're trying to tell other groups or countries or younger generations to do something that people did naturally in the 70s outside. You know what I'm
I was
saying?
actually, this was going to be a question of mine, and you're answering already. So keep going, keep going, keep going, keep
Can't
going.
look at a 12-year-old Chinese boy and go, yo, you need to dance.
Yeah,
He doesn't know
exactly.
what that means.
Yeah, yeah,
That doesn't happen in his backyard. Do you see what I'm
yeah,
saying? So it's like
yeah.
there's certain things that we have to be a little more aware of when we're talking about this stuff, because not everyone has had that experience. And again, this is rooted a lot in certain cultures and communities. You see it in Black culture, you see it in Latin, right? Anything that's doing with salsa, mambo, rumba, these are done together in a place with particular music. People dressed up, they went to meet people. It's a completely different situation. Now when you
Clubbing,
start,
and this is the 21-year-olds now.
right,
It's bottle service time. That's
yeah,
clubbing.
mm-hmm,
Dancing,
yeah. And
whatever.
clubbing now looks way different from clubbing in the 70s and also in the 80s and etc., right? So it's like we
These guys
have
don't
to
remember
be
2000s. Like,
aware. Yeah. We got to be aware of these things, and we have to know that our collective movement is not the same anymore. It's not. And these are the reasons why we have left certain things behind and or just don't do them anymore. You know what I mean? So it's different. So again, maybe Lord Jamar is looking at the dance and saying what's going on with that. I actually saw a clip of DJ Faze, you
mm,
know, talking about that's not breakdancing. And he kept
yeah,
saying that's not
yeah,
breakdancing. Now, his
yeah.
vision of breaking probably looked a lot more like the social aspect of breaking. And then there was a clip of me on one of the clips that they were like, oh, look, we got
Yeah,
somebody
that's
like a
right.
why not or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which is cool. I'm flattered. But the other thing
Shout
is,
out to that was Vix. It was Vix. Vix made that video. Shout out to Vix.
okay, cool. Um, but here's the thing. I follow that blueprint.
Mm,
So I also agree with what FaZe is saying to a
mm,
certain extent because I followed that blueprint. I
right,
social danced coming up. That's
right.
why I move my body in that way. I didn't
Right.
just go to a workshop to learn that. You see what I'm
Ooh.
saying?
Ooh.
Not saying that you can't get information in a workshop. What I'm saying is there's
Yeah,
certain life experience that comes with social dance. You know what I'm saying? So it's like these are important things to talk about.
right.
They are
Real quick,
because
too. Real
you
quick.
know
I'm gonna
the
show.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna show this clip, and then we're gonna continue with that. But then there's a
okay.
clip. Whoop, that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Locking, locking, and then you see it all connected. So in locking, there's this step, right? But in the hollow shape, it's the same step. How would you know that if you don't know?
So okay, this is kind of the theme of what we're talking about, right? This is the theme of what we're talking about. These are dances. He showed the relation to, and I'm sure Monsell could break it down even more. Of what some of the technicalities and some of the history of cultural things of certain movements, and that's why I like Monsell because he could be like, "Oh, this is what they did," and I was like, "Oh crap, this is what I'm talking about," right?
Yeah,
But this is what you're talking about too, like
one hundred percent.
the
Yeah,
social dance. So you're a few years younger than me. They're 82, right? 82, 83?
81.
You're 81. Okay.
Mhm.
So how did you see, because like I said, you were, so if I graduated in 93, you graduated in 97?
You talking
96?
about from high
High
school?
school. Yeah, high school.
99.
99. Okay. So you
Yeah.
were there when it was like, like I said, I'm bringing up this song right now. Goody Mob came up with a song that said,
Hmm.
they don't dance no more. Like, I was like, and I looked at it, I was like, 1998? Holy
Yeah.
crap. It was like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and
for
we talk
sure.
about how there was no, what you call it? This is what they're doing at the club, right? Like nothing.
Yeah.
That's the whole song is about, like, they don't dance. So how
Yeah.
did you come up? What were the dances that were social? Since you're saying this and it's not from a workshop, what was
Right.
your personal experience when, like, the Running Man was gone, the freaking, these dancers are gone. No one's doing the WAP in '99. You know what I mean? Like, what were you
Right.
doing? How did you, like, connect to the dance?
My whole beginnings is with my mother at home. So
Okay.
she did the hustle.
Okay.
And anytime that she heard a good song, she got up and did it. I have a lot of footage of that, by the way. So
Uh-oh.
I
There you
can
go.
share.
Evidence.
Yeah,
Receipts.
yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, we got receipts for sure. I mean, these are the dances that were popular in New York. My
Mm,
mother was clubbing during the time of the hustle. So it was
mm.
like, she's been to the limelight. She's been to certain places that, there were specific dances. And if you were in New York at that time, that's just the dance that was
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
done.
Seemed
You
like
can
it.
find it in a lot of the forms of dance that are considered to be more of a New York type of thing, right?
Right.
Um, so, and then she got some Lindy from my father, who's significantly older than my mother. That's a whole nother story. But um, there's kind of two generations in my household. My dad is
Mm.
Bronx 40s, 50s. My mother is Brooklyn 60s, 70s.
Oh, shoot.
And then when they had me, they had my sister, and then they had me, and they moved to Jersey. All right. So I grew up in Jersey, but a lot of my understanding, a lot of our family events happened in New York City. I was frequenting that place all the time. Um, so just from my general family, I was learning a lot of information that when I eventually found breaking, I saw already the similarities. And even when my mother first saw me dance and I tried to show her what I was doing, her initial reaction was, "Oh, we did that already in the 70s."
That's always the case. That's always the case.
Which
I
again,
remember.
she's not
Yeah.
wrong because it
Right.
looks so much like it already. And I'm realizing that when I watch my mother dance, I'm just doing the same steps.
It was just programmed in.
Steps.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right. It was
But
just
the
programmed in.
steps with the intention to break changes everything.
And that's the whole thing. What I'm saying too is just like, there's this whole thing where, a lot of the guys that came up with house dancing, that it
Hmm.
wasn't house dancing, it was club dancing.
Hmm.
They're just
Hmm.
going to different clubs doing the same moves, but because of the music,
Yeah.
it changed the vibe. Just like, like there's like you can see it like there's steps in breaking that are from mambo. But it's not like we
Yeah.
look like we're doing mambo. We look
Yeah.
like we're rocking, like right or whatever. Because it
Yeah.
seemed like the underlying thing is the music. The music changed.
Mhm.
What a move could be like across generations, the same move. But that
Sure.
music should change the vibe and the feel of it. Even it's the
Yeah.
same exact move, right?
Right. So why does it change for breaking? Because, and this is also something generational. As we get more and more technical with this dance, you're the the readiness that's in your step now is because you're about to do a move.
Mm.
That's breaking. That's getting to that breaking point. You're revving that engine up, so to speak. You are about to just totally go to E right now and
Yeah.
blow a gasket type
Yeah,
shit. You
yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean?
Going off.
Yeah, that's going off. That's it. So it's that coupled with those moves
Right.
that changes it. So yeah, I can sweep and kick my leg in a certain way, but there's a reason why I'm kicking it in this way. There's an
Right.
energy behind it, and that's what makes it so exciting and different.
Right.
So yes, we could be doing the same steps, but again, if you only focus but on that only, you're gonna lose a little bit of the social feeling and the attachment to the music after a while. This is
Yeah.
what makes this dance so difficult, and in order for us to like truly, I think, evolve, if we're gonna move forward musically and technically, we have to kind of move these things in increments, if that makes sense. Learn the
Okay.
techniques of things, and then you got to go back and you gotta
Okay.
dance. Maybe you got to dance socially for a while. Then you go back to learning these other techniques, and it's like this is a constant thing that
Yo,
happens with dance.
I'm
It's hard.
very much with you because I even say now the complaint is you can really be a b-boy or b-girl and break, but you don't even need music.
Mm.
You don't. You could create from moves. Oh, this guy did this
Sure,
move, or
you
this girl
can.
did this
Yeah,
move. I'm
yeah,
gonna evolve that move. You don't even need
yeah.
music. You could totally shut it off. You don't need rhythm. You don't. You could just
Hmm.
even if it's like, oh, you're talking about athletics and flair, windmill. No, I'm talking about little footwork steps.
Yeah.
It's still like you could be super nerdy, no music, be off beat, and be like create some concept.
Bro, you
It
can
can
scat
happen.
and do footwork at the same time if you want to, and the
Yeah.
rhythm is in that. Like you're doing maybe drum breaks
Yeah.
that's in your mind or some shit. Sure,
Yeah.
anything is possible. It's always the question of why, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Is really,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what I
And
mean?
I think
Um,
because like, and this is always what people complain, not complain, but they're just like, you always talk stuff about the tournament style competitions. I'm like, well, I like it.
yeah,
If I talk so much smack, I still enter them. I still enjoy doing them, but I
yeah,
do come from an era prior to that, and
yeah,
I want there to be some type of connection, not fully, but at least a respectful like question, like what you said. Why? I want you to ask the why versus just
yeah.
oh, well, he did this. I want the crowd to do this. And you know what I mean? And so now this is where we're getting at. How do we do that so you're very specific. If you graduated 99
Mhm.
and, but it was environmental, right? We could say even genetic, but environmental, where you got to do these social dances with your mom and then be influenced by your dad, whatever. Not
Mhm.
every, like what you just said, a 12-year-old kid in China. Yeah, right. They don't even, there's no
It's very
connection.
different for them. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
There's no
I mean,
connection,
then
let
there's
alone if
more to the,
guys, go ahead.
I've been so when I got old enough to start doing my own version of clubbing. Now in '99, after I graduated, I moved to Philadelphia. Right.
Okay, see, now we're going there. Now we're
So
going there.
we're talking now. I'm 18 years old in Philly. Philly's
Mm,
uh music history scene and stuff during that time from the late '90s into the 2000s is something that I wouldn't have been able to get in New Jersey either. I got a
mm,
different experience there. It's different from New York even. It's different,
mm.
you know.
Shout out
So
to the gathering.
the gathering is one of those places for
Yeah.
sure. Um yeah, I mean we have already been very spoiled with just proper DJs in that city,
Mm,
right?
right,
Who
right,
were very active at that time still. So they were playing in small bars and stuff like that. We would just go and have a good time and dance. Will we be breaking? No, not all the time.
right,
There was place and time for all that stuff. The gathering is where we went to do that shit. If you
right.
want to battle, if you want to get into a fight, you go to the gathering, you know? But if you want to like meet a girl, you don't go to the gathering for that. That's not where you do that at.
Right,
Those who have went there, they might know what I'm talking about. But that was also a very specific thing and experience that a lot of Philly dancers who went there, they'll talk about that. Even
I
Jersey
mean,
will come
there is
down to New
something
York
about
pretty
Philly.
often.
There's something
For
about
sure.
Philly. Like,
Yeah.
you look at Box, you look at Josh, you look at
Hmm.
Maka, you know what I mean? You look at Breeze, they came up like, that was like that was a place where I heard gathering. It's like if they put on a certain funk song, everyone could lock. They put on a house song, everyone could house dance.
Hmm.
They put on a break, this is where guys like Cricket exist. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
you look at
Yeah.
Cricket, you go, that guy could just dance. Like it's just
Yes.
this is going back to like how do we educate when there's like, well, this is how I represent the music and my interpretation versus like what I'm
That's
talking
fine.
about, this gathering style of like these guys could just any record they could adapt and look like
Yeah.
they're doing the style. Even if they're
Mhm.
faking it to make it. It's a dance with the bop and the rock and the jack, whatever you want to call it. Versus
Yeah.
breakers like I'm stiff rock and I just do this, yo. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm. Well, Philly is a I would say a dominant black culture city.
Mhm.
There are a lot more I would say Black American participants in Philadelphia who do hip hop.
100. 100
So, and
across the
I
board.
say that specifically because there weren't that many in New Jersey from what I know. There were a lot of Filipino kids, okay?
Holla.
Um, people who wrote graffiti, the ones that I knew at least, a lot of them were Italian or Puerto Rican,
Mhm.
okay?
Right.
MCs mostly black. There was some white boys from time to time that would, you know, try their hand at rap. But specifically just Philly in general was it's a very black city, if I have to say it, you know? And a lot of us who came from that were immersed in that. So like
Yeah.
there's a very specific um like overall feel to everything. Like even the cipher was different there. It was just a
Yeah.
different participation there. Like you said, there were certain songs that were being played and people were just like losing their minds when they heard those records. Like Philly had also their own anthems, you know? It's like if you go to, you know, New York and they play something like, I don't know, even outside of Give It Up, Turn It Loose, but like Frisco Disco or something like that.
Yeah,
People are
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yo, like
Yeah,
they
they lose their
start
mind Frisco Disco. Yeah.
you know, that wasn't if it was a popular record in Philly, but there's other records, is what I'm saying. Like it was very
Right.
regional in that
Right.
way.
Right.
So, you know, the dancers that come out of that Philly time period, we all experienced a very similar thing. And we put the dance first.
Okay.
That was the
Okay.
value there. If you
Okay.
did not dance, we didn't really care for you, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
So there was a capsule going on, you know what I'm saying? There was a very like yeah, a very like secluded way of doing things in that city, I would say, you know. So
Right.
most people from Philly would understand that. And again, we had the right music knowledge there
Mm.
because of the knowledge and respect that our DJs had. You know, and
Yeah.
Scheme is one of those DJs. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
just say one because there were many. You
Right.
know, there were many. There was Randy Flash, which was a friend of mine who you know, rest in peace, amazing. Um, Groove, who's Scheme's, you know, teacher, rest in peace, also incredible. Like they all, Grand Wizard Rasheen. I mean, we can go down the list. Cash Money. I mean,
Yeah.
and they were playing at events that we would go to. The 5 spot, Cash was at pretty often. I mean, these are all like, you know, we're surrounded by in a way DJ and hip hop royalty. So like for the
Jazzy
dancers
Jeff.
to come out of Philly without that type of like,
Yeah.
you know, representation, it's like, dude, where, you know, what were you doing? You know what I'm
We're, they
saying?
weren't dancing. That's for sure. They
Yeah,
weren't
maybe
dancing.
not. Maybe they weren't, you know, maybe they couldn't get down in that cipher, so to speak. And that was a lot of like sometimes the gathering would if Scheme would put on a particular record, if you ain't coming in with tops, like bro,
Mm.
nah,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that was what it was about. And Philly's very interesting in that way because it's New York adjacent, you know.
Right. Yeah.
They have their own thing. It's like Frisco to LA. It's very similar. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
Yeah. Yeah. We're different.
it's just
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. It's different. Yeah. Everyone's like, yo, I'm from Cali. It's like, it's funny because, like, you know, in LA, they be like, CA all day. And up here, we're like, Bay. If you say that
Mm,
CA shit, we're like, we're not part of it. It's like this weird, like, we're not part of that. Like,
right.
like we just
Yeah.
think Bay. We don't, it's like West Coast, no Bay. Like we don't, we kind of want to separate ourselves from LA. Like
For
that's
sure.
them. You know
because
what I
you got
mean?
your own thing. You got your
Yeah,
own
yeah,
thing. And when you do, that's fine. It's okay to kind of just like differentiate. It's not saying that one's better than the other, even though
right,
that
right,
that stuff was happening a lot too.
right. Yeah.
But no, like it's all good. Like feel like and I think what helps like with these conversations about the history of dance, um, me not being directly from New York City helps me to look at New York critically, if that makes
Mm,
sense. And
right.
a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
what's happening within these conversations, I'm not emotionally attached to.
right. Yeah.
So I'm listening to everyone. It's even
Same.
like what Mr. Reyes said. He said Faze disrespected Puerto Rican dancers. He did. He did in that post,
Yeah.
you know.
He said
And
a
there's a
lot of
lot
wild
of
stuff.
disrespect. Yeah, there's a lot of disrespect that's coming out on both sides. And then you get met, even if you bring up that as what might be happening, they'll be like, well, they so and so whatever disrespected first. When is it? Come on, y'all. Where are
Yeah.
we
It's
going?
crazy.
You know what I
Yeah, it's
mean?
crazy.
Like
You know,
really,
like,
at some point you have to almost laugh at some type of energy like that. When you get to a certain point, especially if you've been around a lot of violence growing up and stuff, and someone can even like come at you sideways. Hey man, you know what I mean? What's wrong?
right.
you know, I don't have to meet you with your energy and more. I could just be
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what's your problem?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
That's good. And that,
Like
and
once we get past these behaviors and these characters, like I'm saying, we can get to some like real
I mean,
conversations.
like I said, it's pretty interesting to see Tariq Nasheed followers be like, but Batch ain't, he was like, but at least you know who Batch is. Like, that's kind of crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, while like I said, with our own scene, we don't even know anything past 96. Right. You know
Right.
what I mean? Let alone like, and it's just like, that's what I'm tired of. So getting to the people and here's the thing, right? Everyone has their own way of interpreting the dance and even music, right? Breaking.
Sure.
Thus, this
Yeah.
is Bigo Ray Guns. Like we can't. That's she's nothing new to us. It's just the world saw and lost their minds. We were just like,
Mhm.
she's into that style. What can you do, right?
Yeah.
Whatever, right?
Right.
But you and Wiggles are going to have a tour with the intention of like, because there are people, and I'll just say it, there's a bunch of kids out there that think that they're dancing, but they're doing karaoke dancing. They're not really dancing. And I can't say like, what do you know? You're freaking 11. Like, how are you going to know? You're just watching your favorite b-boy who's
Okay.
only
Yeah. Yeah.
25 too, who doesn't know either. So it's like, like, you know what I mean? This is why I'm like, Box, don't retire. Box, please don't retire. We need you. And it's like, fuck a win. Right now, like with boxing, like fuck a win. We just need you to be there to see what it looks like to be
Yeah.
a natural dancer that's a b-boy
Yeah. 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 A
versus,
lot of us had no model to go off of for the most part. Yeah.
you know what I
Go
mean?
ahead. Continue. You can continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Nah. But this is what I'm saying. Like, even for yourself, you're not battling as much, so they don't really get to see you. Like,
Yeah.
they're lucky if they catch you at a cipher because then it's like, oh, that's how it's supposed to look like. Because like to a lot of people, these kids, when you did that street star, they were being conceived. So it's like, so it's like
Yeah.
that clip that changed that made people concentrate on the rock or on the bop or the gig. Oh, this is how because it was that 80s kind of like up rock, stiff up rock, shuffle, shuffle, drop style of the top rock. And when you
Yeah.
kind of came in, even though Machine was dancing like that, KML, Abstract, Remind,
Mm-hmm.
but
Right.
you kind of made it like aware, you gave a visibility to it to be like, oh, this is what I guess you could do. And there was that time that was 15 years ago, it shifted, and then now it's like, well, I could dance. Skiddly do that bop freeze. Like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like it doesn't
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Karaoke dancing, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the format of the battle also gave me a lane. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So,
Yeah.
like you said, other people were dancing just as well to the music. But the format of a top rock battle really like shines some light on what that is. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
But
So
you know, that's
how do we get to that standard again? Because the standard now is like they think they're doing it. Kids think they're doing it, but they're not doing it.
I mean, I think if they want to, you know, that's the thing too. Like maybe they don't, man. You know,
What if they want to,
w-
but they just don't know how to? What's the approach? Do you know what I mean? Because no one
mm,
knows. No one's telling them. Okay, here's the first thing. No one's telling them that sucks. Because why? Because these guys could air flare 90, air flare 90, air flare, and they're great at it. And they're hitting the cymbal crash on the one,
that's
and they don't want
incredible.
to be like, hey, that shit's garbage.
It's not garbage. It's just it's not. You know, it may not be an evolution necessarily of what we would consider to be a musical dancer. You know,
Mhm.
it is a dope thing to still do that. That's all. You know what I mean? Like that, like, but can we also do better than that? I'm sure we can. You know,
So how do we
I'm
come
sure
about it
we
though?
can.
Like, how do we come about it? How do we educate it? How do we? Because there's not a lot of like that. My thing is the guys that have this, that the guys that are like winning and
Mhm.
have the most visibility aren't necessarily good at it either. Do you know
Right?
what I'm saying?
Yeah. I
And
think
I don't
again,
want to take
it's
away
our
from
format.
them. I just know
Hmm.
that they're good at what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Versus
Yeah.
like, hey, why don't we open up to this thing over here? Like, you want to learn
Yeah. Yeah.
about some of the music history and musical theory? Like, they
Mhm.
kids be like,
Yeah.
like, I just want
It's
to
our
air
format.
flare.
It's our formatted things, man. This is where like systems play a large role and why things don't continue the way they should maybe
Mhm.
or they don't get preserved possibly. These
Yeah.
tournament style battles really ruin a lot of, you know, what we consider to be part of the dance. It's almost like if you even try to do that here in this place, like you don't know what this is about at
Right,
this
right,
point, right? So
right.
the way and the format and the lights, the stage, the whatever we got going on at this point is not an environment that creates what we're thinking about in terms of
Mm.
how the dance should be done. We don't even have moments at those events to do that type of thing anymore. It's almost like when people are like, okay, 5 minutes cipher time before we
Yeah,
get to the
yeah.
next battle. Like that's ridiculous. It's like clock in, clock
Right,
out, you know. I never danced like that. Like to let me get my dancing real quick so that I can no, like what does this
right.
mean?
Yeah.
You know? Plus once you really start getting into it, you're gonna have to stop anyway. So it just kind of don't make sense. Um, but yeah, I think there needs to be places for us to go in order to do these things, you know. And honestly, that part of dancing is not always, um, I guess, seen. You know,
Right,
if it's done in a social environment, it's not being live
right.
streamed. You know what I'm saying? Like people are not going to want to go and exert energy to something that is not going to get them a $5,000 prize, if that makes
Yeah. I mean,
sense.
that's part of that. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of things that are just like, well, how do we? Yeah, I mean,
Mhm,
because now we're talking more of just we are carrying certain traditions and like certain ideas
mhm.
versus like with a
Yeah.
tournament, there's an objective to win, right?
Yeah.
Or get as much
Right.
clout as I can. If not, if not winning, get as much attention as I can on. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna do it with your little intricacies of understanding dance. I gotta hit that cymbal crashing everywhere, man. Like, and have my crappy dancing.
Yeah, we're valuing that more. Yeah, we value that more at
Right.
this point, you know. What's real, what's not is always gonna come up in that conversation. I don't know even. Like there's stuff that I look at, I'm like, that's
Yeah.
fire, you know. Um, again though, like it depends. There's a time and place, I think, for those types of things to happen too. That's cool. Like, you know what I'm saying? I appreciate also the tournament breaker.
I
Like
still
that
enter it,
is a
bro. So
specific
yeah,
person.
I
Yeah,
still
man.
enter it
Like
though.
that's
So
not
yeah,
easy to
no.
do. You know, so even you ask me like, have I been battling? Hell no, I ain't battling. Because in order for me to get like into a battle and then do one round and then wait and then do another round 20, 30 minutes later, my dude, I'm done. I'm already done based off the fact that I just don't dance like
Mhm.
that. meaning I don't start getting into dance and then stop and then want to dance again and then stop. I'm like, once the initial energy hits, I'm good.
Right.
There's no reason for me to try to start up to dance again, if that makes sense. Like, that's just the way that I came up dancing. So it's
Yeah.
hard for me to be able to do this type of tournament style battle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So can I do it? Sure. I'm sure I might throw 1 or 2 rounds. People, oh shit, what? That's fine. Maybe I got to come out every once in a while, let people know I'm still around. That's fine. But am I going to win a tournament style battle? I'm not going to put in the work for that at this point in time, because my energy is being put into something completely
Right.
different. You know what I'm saying? Look at these synthesizers behind me and shit. Like, I'm spending time with
Yeah.
this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm making things. I'm teaching full time in a university. I got stuff that I'm
Right.
doing,
Yeah.
So for me to dedicate my time and energy to that, no, but I'm super down to share my knowledge with whoever else would want to, like, put in that time and
Right.
work, you know? So, like, there's a lot of musical ideas that I have that I feel like I could just pass to somebody else. And I feel like that's where my value is at this
Right.
point.
So okay,
It's
let's
not in the
let's get
battles.
somewhat to the side. And since you mentioned music, I really don't like a lot of the music that's out there because of copyright and live streams, right? The Olympics was pretty
Hmm.
it was pretty groundbreaking, the fact that that was a live stream, and since UMG owns Universal Music Group owns NBC, they had all the Flag and I forgot the other. Excuse me if I don't know the other DJ had access to 300 song catalog that you didn't hear in a live
Yeah.
stream if you cared about monetization, right? Like they were
Right.
playing like the classics. And that's what's coming up a lot,
Yeah.
especially guys like Heat Rock. He made a whole video of like running towards the classics, right? And even Red Bull, right? Red Bull earlier last year with the Lords of the Floor, they're like, we bought the rights to play, Steezo and freaking Yellow Sunshine, all these classics. And now, and those a lot of those kids like, what is this? Like, where's DJ Flag? Or no- so it's like, no disrespect to Flag, I love you, but I'm just saying, this is the whole thing. It's like the radio, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
not the radio, but it's just
Yeah.
like what's popular is popular. So they don't even know this classic stuff. Like you first go disco at an event, yeah, right. Like you won't hear
Mm.
that. You barely hear like any
Yeah.
Bob James. You might hear Nautilus, right? Like if you're lucky with certain
Hmm.
DJs, right?
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
making music that kind of caters to that feel, or you're just like, yo, I'm just on my whatever the beats are for whatever the mood is? Like,
I think if just because most people know me as B-boy, why not? They just assume I'm gonna make breaks
right.
or something like
Mm.
that. That's not the case. That's not the case. Uh, I'm doing free jazz. I'm doing electronic. I'm doing hip hop, boom bap. I'm doing all that type of
Okay.
stuff. Stuff that I've been doing, creating since I was a kid, and I've always been into more along the lines of, like, Herbie
Okay,
Hancock, that
word.
type of stuff.
Okay.
You know, future jazz, so to speak, and hip hop. Um, so you know, I'm thinking about creating a project specifically for
Mhm.
breaking at some point. But I will work with drummers and other musicians on that, because there's certain elements, I think, that need to be present in a lot of that music in order for it to feel like what an extracted break from a soul record would sound like or feel like, if
What do
that
you?
makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. What do you
Um,
feel like they're missing? You feel like what's the extraction? What do you think is missing that they don't get that? I mean, I can have a million
Natural
theories in my
timing, for
opinion, but you
one.
go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, natural timing, for
Oh,
one.
because it's all quantum, like
Um,
digitized and
yeah, I mean, if you drum a beat versus program a beat, it feels different, you know.
I mean, shout out to Jay
Um,
Dilla because that's what he made different, right? It sounded
right.
more natural versus like, let me just repeat this.
It was a bit more natural. He was okay with the
Right.
imperfections. That's the
Yeah.
thing. right? I think there's a lot of music production, especially now. People are, I mean, you can literally do anything you want, but there's an element of music that you get through jamming that you don't feel necessarily in electronic music. Electronic musicians don't necessarily jam with each other as much. Depends what kind of musician you are. But for the most part, it's one person sitting in front of a computer, right? So you don't get the kind of feedback that you would from another musician in the room. You're not playing off of each other. There's that type of relationship that you can feel with that music, you know, with jams and musicians in the same room. You don't really get that feel from programming a beat, so to speak. And you have enough time to hear that pass by over and over again. And let me tweak this one sound one more time. Actually, I think I'm gonna put it right here. Let me see. Let's do the drum again. No, man. They played it and that was it. They did it. That was
Right.
it. You know, it's like there's too many things that we correct. We go back and we correct. We go back and we correct, you know, to make it
Right,
perfect,
right.
you know, but perfect is not what we were enjoying so much about the music back then. You know, you can hear even the recording wasn't
Yeah,
that good. There's a lot of Jay Dilla beats, man. That sound like that shit was on 3 cassette tapes
right.
later. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But it feels
right,
good because he probably just drummed it out and said, "That's it,
right,
done. That's it." Don't even go, like, he was just in the moment and he kept it
right,
pushing, and
right.
that's it,
Yeah.
you know? So,
That's the. I mean, this
you
is
know,
this is the stuff that like. This is why I'm glad having this conversation because there's not a lot of people that understand what I just said. Huh? What does that have to do with a 6 step, man? Like, aren't you gonna get my 6 step better? Like this
yeah.
doesn't work.
That's why we gotta make more music, man. We need these kids to make music. We need them to paint. We need them to do all the other things. Like, art is all relative to each other. Artistic movements and culture comes from many things. It's not just a dance. A dance is one very, very, very small aspect of that. This is why it's hard for people to grasp the full understanding of why something would be considered black culture, why we would call hip hop a subculture. Okay, that's a whole
Yeah,
nother
here we go.
conversation to have,
Here we go. Here we go.
because it's an offshoot of something that it originally started
Right.
doing. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that,
Right.
you know? But people always want to be the dominant. They want to be the dominant culture. They want to be the dominant voice. And that's where we start to get issues, because I think they think there's a bag at the end of all this stuff. I don't know what's going on, to be honest. But these are behavioral issues more than they are about conversations
And
about
this is what
facts.
I'm saying. It'd be different if you want people that have been studying it. And I'll tell you, these are Black Americans, Davy D, Nelson George. You know what I mean? Like, like I said, Moncel. These are guys that have been studying for years with documentation. Let's go there versus talking points from a guy that just like made a few documentaries that didn't care about any of these people. I want people that research that
Mm,
care about, you know what I mean? That care about, like, again, one of the first guys to cover Charlie Rock was David D. You know what I'm saying? And he's a
yeah.
journalist. He's had the Hard Knock radio show for years, and even before that, he was on a local station, KML, doing street, like, you know what I mean, like really, community type stuff. And I'll be like,
Yeah.
and he worked with Jeff Chang to revise, and you don't stop. You know what I mean? Recently, right? Like around 2020 or something like that, they came out
Mm,
with a revision of it.
mm,
And I might not agree with everything, but at least it's like he's put in the work. He's not just this side guy, and I want to make money now. And then I'm gonna like trash talk you because that's the only way I can defend. You know what I mean? Like we need to be like what you said, like just characters versus like
yeah.
I'm objectively gonna look at this. And this is what I like about
Mm,
Dr. Mayat, when he had their discussion with Dr. Derek and Unk, they totally disagreed with them. But they weren't just like, you're this
yeah.
and that. They're just like, well, what we need you to do is come out with a dissertation and we'll peer review it. And like, dude, cool, perfect. Like that's what I want. That's what I want to hear.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. All
You
right.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fine. You know?
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
These are the kind of conversations I feel like need to at least in some way start being
yeah.
had, you know. just that so people can kind of come together and speak. That and like there's there's things that are hurtful with these are hard conversations to
Right.
have. You know, I've been through all this stuff through the 90s. I've been called white boy this, white boy that, coming up, doing my thing, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. Like, you know, also with a lot of people who are speaking to me who don't also know anything about my own history and where I come from or where even what am I? You know what I'm saying? Most people thought I was Puerto Rican, especially when I started breaking. So it's like, these are things that we have. These are strong American issues. You know, I'm sure they happen in other places, but we're talking about hip hop and breaking and the 90s and New York and New Jersey, Philly. You know, there's racial issues with these things that we can't necessarily overlook.
Ooh.
There are things
Uh-oh.
that happen in society that we should point out because this is American
Yeah.
history, you know, and it's important to how things became, how things happened, you know, and a lot of that had to deal with tension. But we find ourselves now recreating that tension while having these conversations,
100. Yeah.
you know, and it's like at some point we have to like try to speak through it, at least let someone speak about it. You gotta let people talk, man. You know what I mean? Like, because sometimes too they need to let it out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes they need to hear themselves say it. These are thoughts
Yeah.
sometimes in people's
Right.
minds, you know, that they haven't been able to talk with anybody about. It's like you were saying one time I hopped on your live, you're like, man, this conversation I'm having right now, I feel like I have this conversation with Why Not, but I can't have this with a younger breaker,
Right.
you know. That's real, man, you know, and mostly, you know, we're in our little bubble of our things that we experience and we don't have the chance to speak to other people about these things. But now the internet has opened up so much of the conversation, you know, that it's going to be a messy getting to know each other.
I mean,
You
like I
know,
said, just like
but we have to be kind, bro. At some moment, we have to be respectful. Now, I'm not saying don't stand up for yours. You know what I'm saying? But I'm telling you right now, like from my own personal journey, I'm in so much peace that if you came up to me and started cursing me out, depending on the day, you might get it. But for the most part, I'm going to just be like, okay, what's good? You know, what are you mad about? Let's talk about it, you know? And if you don't want to talk about it, I'm going to give you
right.
space. I don't know. I mean, what else do we
Yeah.
got to do? We got to go to therapy, just like you said. That's why that
We talked that. Yeah, you
that
can catch
episode
that.
was so good.
You can catch that in the last episode of the trades, breaking and mental health.
Yeah.
And like and again, this is the biggest part of and this is specifically to the breaking community, is that we're not good at communication. Why? Because we communicate through our bodies. Let alone they can't
Amen.
talk in front of a camera or type or spell right.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
So look here, this conversation. I love this conversation, the guest conversation. And I caught a lot of flack from even my own OGs, my own people that I've grown up with. Even, you know, we're like, you consider yourself a guest in hip hop, and I say yes. And they're like, why? I said, because I'm starting to understand what this conversation is about. And I don't think anyone's even questioning my participation in this, but they just want to know, am I trying to take ownership of this thing? And I'm not. It's not mine. So you want to call me a guest, I got no problem with that. You know, doesn't take away anything that I do with this dance or this whole thing that I do. It's besides dance, it's bigger than dance for me. You know, battling is that's a whole nother conversation we can have. I have no problem doing any of those things. But for myself personally, if I call myself a guest, it is for one reason and one reason only. I'm not here to own this thing. I am opening up the conversation as someone who's even, I would say, I'm revered in this dance. People are asking me to go to places all the time based on whatever I did within this whole scene, right? And when I show up, I'm showing up as a guest.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true. You have a point there. I never thought
So
about
that's
that.
just what it is. So I even posted something on the internet once on Instagram where I said, you know, a lot of y'all waiting around for a phone
Oof.
call, but you've never set up a chair in an event.
Wow,
You know what I'm
yo.
saying? So when we talk about community and culture and all these things, like if you're not really a participant in that way and all you're trying to do is run the house, of course people are going to be like, yo, who are you in this whole thing? You know? So maybe it's my humble nature, maybe it's my experiences that I've dealt with over time, but this is the reason why I take that stance. And I take that stance, right? As an American, I'm not black either. I found this dance eventually. Were certain things happening in my area, in my household that led me to it? 100%. But that's not it. I know that what I'm doing is something completely different now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Makes sense.
so it's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm not hurt by any of that. You know, I've had people that I've been in conversation with just because I consider myself a guest tried to discredit things that I do because that's where my stance is at now.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. And I'm like, well, that's impossible. And now you got to battle me because now I'm not playing with you.
That's the part that they don't really expect, right?
This is
Um,
still hip hop though at the same time. And
yeah,
I also
yeah.
value that aspect of hip hop. Well, if I get called out, for example, I'm not shying away from a battle. Why? Because there's a reason for you coming at me. You know,
Mm.
whatever that reason is, let's handle it. That's perfectly fine with me. That's what this is about. I love the checks and balances and the energy behind hip hop for these specific things too. You know, so I love the what could be considered good or bad. It's all perspective at the end of the day. You know, I just wanted to say that. But
Right. Yo, no, that's
yeah,
good. I mean, honestly, where I stand on it, I can't say nothing. I'm just an observer, and I just want to do the research. I want to give people the credit. I care more about the people than anything else because
yeah,
this is what. It's funny because all these debates. Let's be real. A lot of the talking points are from Sir Norn Rad. They're from Pluto Seven, who done the research.
yeah,
That didn't care about anything like this. They just wanted to document and interview. And to me,
yes,
that's where I'm like, yo, Pluto, yo, Norrad, you guys are the men because you guys are doing the work that helps me. When I do this research, I put myself like, yo, Sasha, tell me, oh man, like Voodoo, nah, man, that song's the shit.
mhm,
I was like, oh shoot, what did you do with that? You know? So for me, as a creative, this is what I do with the research. It
mhm,
puts me in like I can never be there, but I can imagine. And from that imagination, I could create. And that's why I like the research, right? This is where my value is. So I don't care, like you said, get whatever. I care about who these people are, like, and what documentation, all the stories I could hear as much as I can, because it helps my creative process. It helps me go, what was in their minds? What was the song? What was the feeling? Okay, can I create from that my interpretation in that feeling? What were the dances? This is why this is all important, right? Like, I'm trying to recreate it, even though it's impossible. I'll never be there, but I could recreate it. And so when I hear all this stuff, it's like, ugh, but go ahead and use whatever because I'm documenting
mhm,
it, right?
mhm.
This guy might say one thing that totally contradicts this guy. I'm gonna hear their stories and then let's try to
Clear it
like
out.
find
Yeah,
some
yeah,
type of truth there's some type of truth in the middle. Cool. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm at 120 episodes. I never thought I was gonna be at 120. I was just like, I'm just been doing this just because like, oh, I got to talk to Charlie Rock. Cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like that. Oh, I get to talk to these people. This gives me an excuse. Dope. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
and these
man.
guys have become like, my elders, right? And it's cool because it's like I'm totally into what they're saying. I want to ask
Yeah,
the questions. And it's document. And that's all
yeah,
I
yeah.
care about. You know what I'm saying? So you could say, like you could say whatever you want to say, but you ain't gonna step to me. And I will battle. And that's one thing that like
That's fine.
on the B-boy, on the breaking side, why
Right.
people don't really question, because I'm still putting in the work. If I was
Yeah.
just Joe Schmo doing the doc, then I'd be looked at as everyone on the internet. But the
Right.
fact that I still try to practice it is what gives me
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm working on something. And
Yes.
I don't know. I could maybe,
Participation is key. Participation is key.
yeah.
That's a
And I
value.
think,
I would say that's a value of hip hop. If you're not participating, your voice can only go so far.
yeah,
You know.
and I think that's. I think we, the problem, there's it's dope, but that could stop us too, because then we could have someone that's a dope participant and a bad judge and a bad teacher that can barely,
Yeah,
what I mean?
it goes in many
It's like too much.
directions,
Like that
man.
guy's
Like,
so dope, but yet he's doing heroin, and you're just like, I respect him. Like, what the hell's going on? Like,
hey, man, there's a lot of really shitty people who are great at what they do. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
That's another aspect of it, man.
yeah,
But it's like who do we want to follow is the question here. Who do we want to agree with and disagree with? It's like we're gonna go through this as a loophole, man. This has been going on for a long time.
right,
And the crazy part is though, and this is also going back to like what these ownership conversations are about, is that I'm seeing a lot of people spending a lot of time online speaking about these conversations, and they're bringing up things like break-in. They're speaking about break-in. They haven't probably been to a break-in event ever in their life, or maybe they have and they haven't been in a long time. um and that's great that they're spending time speaking about it, but there's also like, you know, a kid somewhere out in Asia who's just been sponsored by a major company who's, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's gotten to a point where it's like it's extremely hard to get a hold of what this thing is doing at this point.
right,
So I say that to say like I'm trying not to attach to too many things because I'm looking forward, if that makes sense.
word.
I
No,
will
I hear
hear
you.
everyone out because I think it's important. I learn every day from anybody,
Yeah,
from
yeah,
everybody. You
yeah,
know, it doesn't matter what level they're on, doesn't matter where they are. But at this point, specifically for myself, like I'm looking towards the future. What can this thing do now at this point? You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and we're here trying to dig up these facts,
Yeah.
supposedly,
I mean, I'm enjoying
of
it. I'll be
something.
honest, because I'm like, ooh, I never heard that before. You know
Hey,
what I mean? It's like, so it's kind
mm-hmm,
for me, it's kind of cool.
mm-hmm,
Like, ooh, I don't like the way it's coming about, but it's coming out, and again, it puts
yeah,
me into how are they thinking? Who is this person? Blah 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 blah. And and if you're
right.
just talking on the internet, not as a participant, then I don't care what you say because you're just trying to win an argument. Versus like it's like okay,
It is doing
it's doing
something.
something. It's putting it out there, but
It
it's
is,
like
yeah,
okay, so
yeah,
recently, right? Rebel BC1 happened in Brazil. Mano and ICI's in the finals. Everyone thought ICI's won, Mano
right,
won. Okay, cool. Everyone's complaining
right.
about it. I'm like, all right, if you're complaining so much, why don't you get ICI's Venmo and Cash App and send him some money? If you really have his back like that, you feel like he's a champion, send him
Nice.
some cash. Fuck this,
Yeah.
whoever the judges are voted, whatever, doesn't matter. If he's your favorite, why don't you support him fully? Oh, you don't want to put in money.
I
Okay.
bought him a coffee when
Huh?
I saw him. I bought
There you
him a
go. Well,
coffee when I
but see
saw
what I'm
him.
saying? Like the conversation is so like it's not like it's
Yeah.
freaking Deion Sanders here. No, this is someone you could touch. We're not at that level where it's just like there goes Shaq. No, he's still of community. So why instead of talking
Mhm.
about like the judges, why don't you send them some money then or something?
Something, I don't know, try to build with each other. I was he Ives flew back to Alaska and I showed up the next day and we did an event and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like
yeah. I
that.
saw that.
Right after he got right back. And I admire Ives a lot, and
Yeah,
Menno,
yeah, both
both of
of them.
them. Um, it's just like, you know, instead of like constantly picking at each other, like how are we also
Yeah,
building? You know what I
yeah,
mean? That's it's not it's we're not looking to build as much. I don't think. It's really weird energy that's happening at the moment. I know things need to happen. Like I'm not saying
sticks.
like,
I
we
need the
don't need,
kicks.
yeah, money is a big part of
Royce.
it. But like I said, like who's really benefiting though? It's like I said, there's some kid out here who's driving a new BMW from
Yeah,
breaking, you
yeah,
know?
I like it.
And I've seen too much of my OGs have a hard time in
Mm,
life to listen to some of these conversations and me just to be like shaking my head and go, guys, we got to do better than
mm,
this. This is
yeah,
not it.
yeah,
I don't like, I'm not mad at that you want to fight for certain things, or you know, there's information that you feel people like, you feel passionate about that. I feel you. But you know, life is happening very fast right now, you know, and a lot of them need, they just need basic needs, and I'm more into how do we get them these basic needs than try to sit here and talk about who made up this move
Right.
first, because I can't do it no more.
No, I like what you
You
said.
know?
What you said earlier too was very important. Like, you want to run the house, but are you setting up chairs? Are you helping out? Are you showing up?
Yeah,
Are
man.
you, instead of like, where's my where why aren't you paying me? You know, like I said, one of the guys, one of the elders I really look up to is K1, because this guy will go to an event,
Yeah.
pay for the event, go to each vendor, check out their stuff, and yo, how much is
Yeah.
that? Let me buy it. Oh, you're so, you know, to a B-boy that maybe never, like, he'll go up to him and be like, yo, you killed it, or whatever, and know your name. You know what I mean? He's like that type of
Yeah.
dude. And I wish more OGs were like that, instead of like, why don't you fly me? Why am
Yeah,
I not part of the
if we were
Olympics? Like,
all,
you know what I mean? Like,
yes, pro, if we were all like that, Reagan wouldn't have gotten the attention the way that she did, because we would have known to invest in the people who were on that stage,
Mhm.
who really deserved to be
Mhm.
there. You know, we would have given them our money, our attention, our repost, our, we didn't.
Right. Yeah.
We didn't. It was so much easier to just point out what was wrong about the whole
Right.
situation.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the people who ended up benefiting is the people we don't want to benefit.
Right.
And we find ourselves back here
Yeah.
again. And it's because we're not
Yeah.
learning. We're not learning very basic life lessons. We're not learning how to navigate through these things that honestly weren't created by us. You know, I'm talking about the systems, the large companies, that none of that shit has to do anything with anything. And if you focus on the thing and the people, then you can't go
Right.
wrong, you know? So like, where are we going? Like, how are we really going to try focusing on these things? I guess we do have to somehow get past these
Yeah,
conversations
I
that are
think that's
happening
the
right now. I
first
mean,
thought, is
people are
talking about it.
doing 6 hour long lives, bro. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy. I can't even keep up with it at this point.
I have only 2 hours and 1 hour, but anyway.
Word.
But I've
Yeah.
been on multiple times a
You
week.
know,
But no, but like I said, I think a lot of it is, one, I keep saying this to everyone, is that the problem is, like, you guys are doing it IG. No one watches content for IG. And no one goes back and go, I can't wait to listen to that thing on Instagram for 2 hours. So, like, you,
it's hard to scroll on Instagram, and two, it's like
while
impossible.
YouTube is a
So
little
that's why,
easier, and like I said, I
yeah,
am on Spotify. I
yeah,
will be working on transferring these 100 episodes into Spotify, because at least you could turn off your phone and you could just have in the background while you're, like, you know, vacuuming, whatever, having your headphones while you're working out. And then again, this is all about, for
yeah,
me, it's documentation versus like the views. It's like these conversations that at least they've been had, and at least like it can go
yeah,
somewhere. And man, yeah, it's just, let's start like, let's start starting the conversation versus just like,
yeah.
I don't know,
I'm
whatever,
down,
like,
man.
I'm owed this because I made up the knee spin. Like, man, no one cares if you made up the knee spin, dude. Like, or
Right.
whatever, you know what I mean? What
Yeah,
we
yeah,
care about, like what you said, it's like, even just basic, like, human, like, how do we interact? You know, like I said, and you know this, it's like, how is, like, one, can you articulate, one, can you communicate? Can you articulate, instead of just like, I thought he won, or, because that doesn't, it's not going to be good enough for a person that wants your critique. And or when you teach, you can't just kick your legs and go faster. Like, that don't help. So one is
mm,
communication. Two, how are your networking skills? How are your people? How are you cordial with people? Are you a diva, or are you just totally like, you know, just like too shy? And then third is your dope and what your
mm,
history. So these are, like, you know, basic, like, just networking skills, you know what I mean? And I feel like that
yeah.
you either need someone to do that for you, or you need to learn that yourself. And that's what gets you through the door. That's why it's like, people like, you know,
And yeah. And if you don't want to do those things, then don't do them. Then maybe these platforms are not what you want to do. But you got to go search and start
yeah,
something else if that's the
yeah,
case. Like, don't fit in if you don't. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying? Like, that's
yeah.
I knew what was for me and not for me growing up, you
Word.
know, for
Yeah.
sure. You know, so it's like there's just certain things that it's like, but then you have to figure it out. You have to work around it somehow. You
Yeah.
know, it's gonna take
Yeah.
time. You gotta like really sit there and look at things and go, well, I want to create something that I'm not seeing right
This
now.
that oh, man, you
You
got it.
know,
You hit the nail on the head. You know what I mean? Like if I sat around waiting for someone to put me on, oh my god, I'd be waiting forever. I create my
yeah,
own opportunity,
exactly.
bro. Like, like I said,
You should,
I
you
don't have, like I
should,
said, it's like,
yeah,
man, I'm not getting as views as this person. Of course I'm human. I'm gonna think these things. And then I look back, dude, I have like freaking 80 hours of content I could create from, and then or whatever I could do so much with this, and that's another opportunity in the
yeah.
waiting. It's just have to be, again, exactly, you have to be creative. How do you create your opportunity versus like, man, Cross hasn't got me yet, like, I'm not judging yet, like, okay.
It's fine,
Yeah,
you
like,
know.
Red Bull, man, screw them.
You'll find the space that values you, you know, you'll find it. And it might be a small
Yeah,
group versus the larger group. Like, do you really want to be in that kind of spotlight or do you not? I mean, like these are, you know, I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of things for people to be a part of. And it's like, again, the question comes now, do you want to just be the dominant voice
yeah.
here? And if that's what you're fighting for, then man, I'm gonna start to see some really strange things from you, probably because
Right,
your intention to do this is to just be the better
right.
person,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
like, okay,
yeah.
you
That's
know,
crazy. Yeah, I hear it.
you won. There you go. You're
Flatter.
welcome. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's all like, here, have it. It's yours.
Yeah.
Now what?
Word. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes we have to like also question like what are we really fighting for
Right.
here in some of these conversations, or even what we choose to do in our life. Like, when is enough enough? Why is it not okay for Box to be like, yo, I
Right.
retire?
Yeah.
He's done. He don't want to do that, and maybe he's now doing it to a capacity that he's not enjoying it anymore, and he's
Right.
okay with just being like, you know, instead of like me bastardizing this thing that I really love doing, I think I'm just gonna hang it up.
Um, right.
Nothing wrong
Nothing
with
wrong
that.
with that.
You know
I
what I
just miss
mean?
him. It's for my own,
For
my
sure,
own
as
thing.
we should mourn him, you know what I'm
It's
saying?
one-
And watch old
yeah,
clips.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's, you
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Here, watch this
For
clip,
me,
you know what I
like I said,
mean?
it's just more about I wish the kids need to see someone like that just around. You know what I mean? Just to be like,
Sure. And there's gonna be a Box in every generation,
right.
I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's gonna be somebody. It's even like, you know, I couldn't like keep beating the death out of these Top Rock battles. At some point I was like, I'm
Right.
okay.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
good. Someone else has to win
Yeah.
now. Someone else has to be the one that talks about
Right.
tops or
Right.
whatever. Bring their perspective in. I ain't never attacked nobody online about how they
Yeah.
top.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Right? Have you ever seen me in some shit like, yo, I ain't doing it right. Like, this is how you do it. I can only tell you what I think I know
Those
about
are
this
all the
thing. That's
boomers that
it.
are
And
50.
if you like my dance, you come to my
Word.
class
There you go.
or you ask me to show you some
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you know, cool, you don't like it. That's perfectly
Right.
fine.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm okay with you not liking my shit. It's
Right.
fine.
Yeah. I hear it. I hear it. Well, cool, man.
You know, there's plenty of people that do, so it's
Yeah,
whatever,
we're
you
about
know?
2 hours in, about to wrap it up. Dude,
Okay,
this is
yeah. Before we turn into these
yeah,
other
yo,
podcasts
six
that be going
hours?
on
I don't
all
know about
day,
those
it's
six
just
hours,
live all
man. That's
day.
crazy. I got stuff to do. But no, man,
At some point, you're just running around in circles if you're talking
that's
that long
crazy.
sometimes, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
I brought up a lot of stuff that, like I said, and I have these conversations behind the scenes with you, right? And through text. So it was
Yep.
good to kind of bring it up forward because I think one, like I said, and not I can't have this conversation with everyone. You know what I mean? Like, because they're
Right.
just like they're only limited, that'd be age or dedication to like more than one craft, or or their awareness. So it's hard to kind of have this conversation where it's like we're going in depth. We're going into like we talked about music production, we talked about music, we talked about jazz, we
Yeah.
talked about even moves from the 60s, social dances from the 60s, social dances from the 80s and 70s. I can't talk to
Right.
people a lot about this. You know what I mean? Like we talked about the hustle, we talked about these are things where it's just like, it's funny because like maybe it's funny because more like all styles people might have these conversations because they're like in the search of the know of like what makes dance dance. But in breaking, I do find it rare. It's very small group of people I get to talk to. And I just feel very grateful that I got to be in public and have this conversation instead of just like, well, how do you stay on beat? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
What is
yeah, yeah.
musicality? Yeah.
Like,
Right.
wow, this is like we went in, which is dope. Like you talked about stuff that I
Cool.
didn't
Yeah.
expect you to talk about. I was just like, when I said, oh, we were gonna go
Okay.
deep, you're like, uh-oh, and I was like, well, I don't know. I was just gonna talk
Word.
about music production, man. Like,
Right.
I was,
For sure.
I was gonna talk about.
There's a lot of things I wanna talk about, and I even see like AER podcast. I love to get on your podcast too
There
and
you
speak
go.
too,
Oh,
man, because I
Ricky's
think there's just
wild,
a lot
bro.
of
Ricky, shout out to Rick the Ruler.
hey, Ricky's. If I know he's from Jersey, so we can
Oh,
share the Jersey
dude,
energy. It's
bro,
all
it's
good.
it's great. And to me, I have the best interactions with him. Like he'll throw me like a
Yeah,
left
cool.
curveball, and I'm like, I'll answer it. Like, because it's like it's
I
not the
love that.
average. Like a lot of people were mad because when me and that's another thing, collaboration, right? Bringing everyone like Dom Key,
Mhm.
Tony 47, Friction. We
Yeah,
all have podcasts, right? And I was like, we need to like get together
that's
and
right.
just talk. And people got mad at him because I'm like, again, it was a 60-second clip, and you don't know did you watch
Mhm.
the whole thing? And there's context to it, but he'll go places where I'm like, that's a good question. And like, what
Yeah.
the other thing is like the AER podcast, he's behind the camera like DJ Vlad, so they've probably seen his clips before, but they're like, "Who is this guy?"
Oh, they just
But
haven't
they
seen
haven't
him,
seen
like
him,
his
and they're
face.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
"Dude, he's in front of the camera. You're
yeah.
good in front of." I was like, "Yo, Ricky, you're good in front of the camera. You ask a lot of dope questions. Like you say some crazy shit. Like let's
Yeah, man.
go." You know what I mean? And people were like, got lost their mind. Like, who is this dude? I'm like, you've watched him before, probably. So shout out to Ricky,
Yeah, yeah,
man.
yeah.
Yeah, get him on, get him
For
on,
sure,
get why
man.
not on?
Yeah, man. I got no problem with
Crazy
whatever is
turn.
a crazy question.
I
It's
can't wait,
fine.
yo, dude. And he likes to drink in it too. Like everyone's trying, man.
Okay. Yeah, I got some whiskey in the
All right, Ricky, you
cabinet.
heard
So.
him. You heard him, Ricky. You heard him, Ricky. But yo, man,
Well, thanks, Pro, man. I appreciate you, man. Like you said, we have these conversations behind the scenes a lot. I hope we had a consistent number of people watching, so I'm glad y'all tuned in. Thank you all also for tuning in. But let's have more
there you go.
conversations. I think this is super important. I think it's important to have these what we consider to be long form content interactions because we can kind of sit through some
Mm-hmm.
things as opposed to just having this a very quick response to something. We can kind of hash out our ideas. um so it's important, like I said. Let's continue these things. And thanks, Pro, man. Appreciate you, man. Love the stuff you're
Thank
doing.
you, man.
Let's definitely like maybe get Marcel on here
Dude,
too, man.
100, bro.
Would
100,
be cool.
100, man. I was trying to get him out to
Mhm.
Toronto and stuff, but something happened. But yeah, I thought, yo, he's a G, bro. He's a G. And like I said, I didn't realize that. Oh, I've watched this stuff before. I just didn't think it was the same dude.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I
for
mean?
sure.
Like, so, but
Yeah, he's in a lot of conversations about dance history,
yeah,
period. Not even just
yeah,
about hip hop or anything. I've known myself for over 20
yeah,
years.
yeah.
So yeah, he's a good
There you
dude.
go. All right.
Yeah.
You can find Why Not on Instagram at Why Not Ism. And you can find me on Instagram at PROFO_FLGZ. This has been The Trades. Bboy, Why Not returns. And oh yeah, by the way, I think it's confirmed next week we will have J Soul and Mr. Freeze. So that'll be a very
Okay, bet.
interesting conversation. I hope. I think I'm pretty sure it's
That's what's
confirmed.
up.
Yeah. I got a lot of questions for him too. All
Dope.
right. All right.
So two Vegas people in Vegas
Yeah,
right now.
yeah,
That's what it
yeah.
is,
But
right?
one's from the Bronx.
That's what's up.
And he has a certain perspective. All right, y'all.
Word.
Peace. Hey,
I'll be tuning in
yeah,
for
why not?
sure.
Stay on real quick before I sign up. All right, peace, y'all.